Dr. Bryan K. Williams is a determined executive coach, author, husband, and father. But most of all, he is a man of faith, and he has used that faith to propel him through the extraordinary journey of his life and career. He reminds us that faith is the essential ingredient required to let go of what we're holding on to in order to grasp the unforeseen and unknown gifts of greatness that lie before us. As he himself says, his life story is based on an interesting mix of anxiety mixed with supreme confidence and supreme faith. Thank you, Bryan, for sharing this lesson. We are better for it. Hello, and welcome to another installment of At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a platform where we will learn from people who come from different walks of life, careers, and experiences, but all share one thing in common. They have stepped fully into the transformative power of saying yes to the unexpected turns of their lives, and they are now using the power of their voice, or podium, to make an impact on the world we live in today. At the Podium is the intersection of art, culture, and big thoughts wrapped up in good, old-fashioned conversation. Today, I'm thrilled and humbled to share the podium with Dr. Bryan K. Williams. Dr. Bryan K. Williams is a keynote speaker, consultant, and author who is a noted authority on service excellence and leadership effectiveness. His passion is to serve others so they may better serve the world. He has been fortunate to keynote or consult with Forbes 5-star hotels, restaurants, upscale dining, casual dining, and fast food chains around the world. His keynote speeches and seminars have helped organizations create a memorable service experience for their customers. He is a high-energy, dynamic speaker who educates and inspires professionals to be consistently exceptional. Bryan is also a best-selling author of 5 books and hosts 2 acclaimed leadership conferences annually, the BW Leadership Academy and the Strong Leader Institute. He has earned degrees in business administration, hotel and restaurant management, adult education, and a doctor of management in organizational leadership. Bryan lives with his wife and 2 children in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Before we hear from Bryan, I want to invite you to share At the Podium with the people in your lives. If you love what you hear from him today, and I know you will, take a screenshot and share on your Instagram and tag @thepodium_Patrick Huey. Or if you're on Facebook, share our link there. Your shares, likes, and 5-star written reviews help grow our audience and move us up the charts. I'm grateful for your support in this capacity. Okay, Bryan, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I have been looking forward to this conversation for months, and I'm so glad we finally found the time to make this happen. So thank you so much.
And also Happy New Year to you and all of your listeners and viewers.
Yes, Happy New Year. What a time that we are living in right now.
Yes.
We're living through an epic change, literally. We are living through it on the planet today.
And you know something that I just started to pay attention to? A lot of us are saying and thinking Happy New Year, almost thinking like the new year is different on its own. But the end of the year will not be any different than the beginning of the year unless we do something differently today, like as in today. So I've started to actually say Happy New Day. So Happy New Day. So scratch Happy New Year, Happy New Day.
Happy New Day. So
yes.
You and I met probably in 2007, 2008. I met you, I remember, at the iSpa conference, the International Spa Association conference. Mm-hmm. It must have been in Florida, maybe in 2007, 2008. It's been a long time.
Time flies. It does.
It's been amazing to watch your career flourish and grow and all that you've accomplished over the past 20 years.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Patrick. You know, I'll tell you, you're saying 2007, 2008, and it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense because it feels like that.
Like that.
It literally feels like that. Because I remember the conference in Florida that you're speaking of, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was that long ago. But that just kind of reminds me that the days may be long, but the years are short.
Yes.
The days may feel long, like, oh my gosh, I got this to do, that to do, that to do. But when you really look back on it, and we've lived long enough to look back on multiple years, and then you start saying things like 15 years ago and 20 years ago and 20 years, you're like, really? That just went by. You saying that reminds me to really try more to be present and appreciate the minutes that I have.
It references back to what you just said. It's about the day. It's not the year.
Yes.
I had a teacher who once said, extraordinary years are made up of ordinary days. And it's the ordinary day sometimes that is where the real magic lies, I think.
You got it. That's exactly it.
I wanted to talk to you for many reasons. But as I was researching you, I found out that you were a stutterer growing up and that you were teased because of it. You know, most kids are cruel. They don't understand things like that.
Yeah.
I had a slight stutter as I was growing up. So when I read that, I had an immediate empathetic response to what that was about. And I'm wondering, how did you actually overcome stuttering to live what I view as a victory? Because now that you stand on stages across the world and you literally speak truth and wisdom over people's lives and careers. So what was that journey for you?
The journey, well, first of all, I'll tell you, I was convinced growing up that my stutter, my severe stutter, was the curse on my life. That was the curse. Now, I've always been a positive person, an optimistic person, but that was that one mountain that I just started to, look, this is just my mountain, and this is the thing I'm going to have to bear. I was used to being bullied every day and talked about every day and laughed at every day. And as you mentioned, kids can be cruel. And I had this stutter from elementary school on through middle school, which is extra, you know, and then up to about the 11th grade, believe it or not, to 11th grade. Now, I've always been an extrovert naturally, and I was afraid to talk. So I felt trapped inside of myself. So I wanted to talk, but I would choose not to talk because I didn't want to be laughed at. That was my normal day-to-day life. What changed, Patrick, was that in 1992, when I was 15 years old and I got a job somehow working in a luxury hotel, working in a restaurant, a luxury restaurant in a luxury hotel called the Grand Palazzo Hotel. What happened was that I fell so deeply in love with my job and working in this luxury atmosphere. I fell so deeply in love with serving people and wowing and doing all these things that I was learning about that was really a part of who I was naturally anyway, that I forgot to stutter. Like 6 months went by. Literally, I remember this. 6 months went by, and I was thinking to myself, I'm not stuttering. And then as I was doing research, I had a paper to write in my senior year of high school. I remember I was writing a paper, and I chose to do a research paper on stuttering. And I found out that stuttering is really a nervous type thing. It's an anxiety type issue. And what happened is that I had so much anxiety about not stuttering that was causing my stutter. So thinking about not stuttering is what caused the stutter. So when I became so preoccupied with something that I was deeply in love with, I wasn't thinking about stuttering anymore. And that's literally how it started. Now I'm in a situation, as you mentioned, where I am fortunate. I'm blessed I've traveled all over the world many times, and people pay to hear me talk. Now, I want you to understand like how mind-blowing that is and how good God is, because as a child growing up, I would, like as a kid, little boy, you would fantasize about the things that you couldn't do. Like, I want to be a superhero. I want to be, you would fantasize about these things you couldn't do. Like I used to fantasize about being Optimus Prime and the Incredible Hulk. You can't do those things, like fly like Superman. Or I used to fantasize about speaking, because that's something I couldn't do. And when somebody was on stage somewhere, a church or a stand-up comedian, or they were talking, I was being such awe because that was a superpower. So when I started speaking professionally, it felt like I'd been doing it my whole life, because I was doing it my whole life. Like Aristotle says, everything is created twice, first in your mind and then in reality. So I was actually preparing myself to be a speaker long before I knew I would be a speaker.
This is amazing. You talk about starting your career in hospitality as a busboy.
Yes.
Which is what we would call an entry-level position.
Yeah.
And many years later, you develop into your final role in the hospitality world with the Ritz-Carlton Hotels, one of the premium luxury hotel brands in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you become their global corporate director of training and organizational effectiveness.
Yes.
I want to hear about that journey from an entry-level busboy position in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Sitting at the apex of training and organizational effectiveness for probably one of the top hotel brands in the world. That is a phenomenal journey.
Yeah. And I have to take a deep breath on that, because whenever I think about that journey, it just humbles me so much, because it seems unlikely. Because you have to understand, we didn't mention this yet, but I'm from a very small island. I'm from St. Thomas. If you look at a map or a globe, it looks like a dot. It's 32.5 square miles. It's a very, very small place. So being a little island boy who's a severe stutterer to being the global corporate training for this well-respected, iconic brand, what contributed to that ascension is I always was a sponge. I was an aggressive learner. I wanted to learn everything I could about everything I was doing. So that first job, that very, very first job as a busboy, the maitre d' said to me, I want you to work in this restaurant like you own it. Those were his exact first words to me. And I took that like I was the CEO of my job. So I would regularly solicit things to do. I would go to my managers, what can I do? Oh, I see that this needs to be done. And I would volunteer to cross-train in other departments. So I would be like, okay, the hours are slow in this department, I'm gonna go to work in housekeeping, right? I'm gonna work in towels. A lot of it was with Ritz-Carlton, actually. Work the towels, work in the front desk, concierge. Total, I had about 17 different roles. So I would say my natural eagerness to learn, coupled with my initiative, like taking initiative, coupled with just building relationships. Like Patrick, you and I know, you can be competent, talented, all of that, but if you don't build relationships, if you don't give people a reason to like you, people will invest in people who they like. We don't talk about that enough in colleges and things like that, but people invest in who they like. And fortunately, I'm kind of likable. And I like people. So it just kind of goes together. So the initiative, eagerness to learn and building relationships, all of that kind of came together. And many phenomenal people gave me opportunities to grow. Get it? They didn't have to. My journey from busboy to corporate executive was really, a lot of it was the result of multiple people giving me opportunities to grow. And they didn't have to do that. So I'm forever grateful to those people, especially.
I did an interview with my sister, who is a very successful attorney in Austin, Texas. Her name is Kiko Anderson. And she said the exact same thing that you just said. She said that there is no successful person who did it alone. And successful people can point to people in their lives who put them on the path to whatever their greatness is. And I think it's so important to remember in this time of fierce individualism and fierce selfness that we don't achieve without support from other people. I think that is a critical message for the day that we're living in.
100% agree with you. 100% agree with you. Even if you are an entrepreneur and you feel like you're self-made, yeah, you can have the best products and services, but customers or business partners, they still have to believe in you and give you an opportunity to sell what you're selling or to offer what you're offering. No one does it alone. No one does it alone.
You just mentioned entrepreneurship, and you are obviously a very successful entrepreneur. You've built this fantastic business in leadership consultancy and in development and in coaching. But in order for that to happen, you had to make a shift out of a very comfortable, very secure and stable position with Ritz-Carlton. What was that impetus for you? Because I'm sure there are many people who have that dream of owning their own business. But for you, what was that impetus that helped you step out in faith? And
well, it's important to note that I've always had an entrepreneurial streak. Right? Ever since I was a little kid, I've always had little businesses here and there. When I was living in St. Thomas, before I worked in hotels, I had a party promotion business where I would book the most popular band on the island and then rent out a venue and all this kind of. And then when I started working in hotels and I was told to work like you own it, that all fit in really well. So increasingly, during my ascension in my corporate life, I increasingly became uncomfortable. Does that make sense? Uncomfortable in a good way, meaning I knew that it was time for me to move on and do something else. So it was like an internal knowing. Like nobody have to tell you. Like you just can feel internally, I'm getting to that point where I need to branch out and do more than I'm allowed to do. When you're working in an organization, no matter how phenomenal the organization is, there are some barriers, depending what your job title is or what your salary grade is. You can't do whatever you want to do. And as I've studied myself, what I realized is that I am happiest. I am most joyful. I am most productive when I don't have too many barriers, where I can say, I want to do this and there's no restrictions, do it. So that became increasingly evident to me as I was ascending, and particularly when I got to the senior corporate level, it was very, very obvious to me. And you could probably relate to some of what I'm saying, given that your previous role. But then it got to the point where it was like, I wasn't listening to the pebbles, because I believe God speaks to you in pebbles. It's like, it's pebbles first. If you don't pay attention, start throwing rocks. You don't pay attention, boulders, I see it. So then I was like, all right, let's go. And I took a major leap of faith. I left this brand that I absolutely loved and still love. I'm still a Ritz-Carlton hardcore, right? I have academic degrees, but Ritz-Carlton was my university. That's where I learned business and all this sort of things. I left this great company, stable job, as you mentioned. It was literally on a Friday. And we had decided mutually, like by the following week, I'll be gone. It got to that point. So I went and I drove from the corporate office in Chevy Chase, Maryland, the DC area, and I drove down to Howard University in Washington, DC. My wife was doing her doctorate at the time at Howard University, and she was studying for an exam, Patrick. And I called her outside. I said, guess what? I just left my job. And she's like, okay. But I said, but Mr. Optimist, right, Patrick? I said, but Lisa, guess what? Lisa, I'm going to start that business, that speaking consulting business I've been telling you about. She said, okay, let's talk about it at home. That same night, this is September of 2006, she sat with me. She said to me, Bryan, I believe in you. You will do whatever you need to do to be successful with this. That's all I needed to hear, right? Now, from that moment, that night, so I had to make the same monthly salary by October 2006 that I was making in my corporate job. I didn't have like 6 months savings and a year savings and all this stuff people tell you to have a business. I gave myself 1 month to make the same salary. And by the grace of God, I did it. By the end of that year, I was able to make over half of my annual salary. And by the following year, end of the following year, I was over 3 times my annual salary. Not saying that to impress anyone, but to impress upon the viewers listening to At the Podium with Patrick Huey, is that failure will never overtake you if your determination to succeed is strong enough. If it's strong enough, no one can stop you. The biggest barrier we have, Patrick, you and I both know, is ourselves. So that's what happened.
You're literally speaking truth in so many profound ways. I want to know, because you speak with such authority, such conviction, such passion, and you have the support of Lisa and the belief in yourself. Did you ever doubt, or did you always know that this was going to be the 3 times the salary, the longevity of your career?
Yep.
Did you know that was going to be the result? Did you ever have doubt? And if you did, how did you move through that and beyond it?
Yeah. So it's interesting. That first month when I left the company, there was a very interesting mix of anxiety, but supreme confidence and supreme faith. There was anxiety and there's an unknown, but I had a lot of confidence in knowing, you know what? I'm here. God doesn't make mistakes, and I'm going to do this. And I remember saying to myself very clearly, that first day, I'm going to give myself 2 options. I'm going to either succeed or I'm going to succeed. Those are my only 2 options. And I meant it. And proceeded with that mentality. Like I basically jumped off the cliff without any umbrella. So I had to fly, basically. I had to fly. So I remember one time Lisa asked me, this is a few weeks into it now. She asked me, so if let's say this doesn't work as well as you want it to work, but what will you do? I'll go buy groceries. I'll go wash cars. This will succeed. So I just had faith that this is where I was supposed to be. Like everything was building up to that point. Much like right now, this is like my 15th year in business. It's unbelievable to say. I feel like I'm building up to do something else. I don't believe that I'm where I was born to be. I think I'm on that path, but I do believe that there's something more, that it's all like nothing I've been through, nothing that you've been through will be wasted.
People ask me, why did you leave Montage? I will never have a negative word to say about Montage. They're a fabulous company. I knew that I was building to something else. And to be perfectly frank with you, Bryan, I don't know what that something else is. I know that what we're doing now is definitely a part of it. But I had to have the faith to let go of something that was incredibly good to me, a company that was very good to me, and step into an unknown, because I instinctively understood that if you hold on too tightly to things, if the value of the thing supersedes the worth that it's bringing you, you're in trouble, I think.
No, totally. And you mentioned something that's so powerful, Patrick. A lot of times, the good things that are meant for us in this world will only happen as a direct result of faith, which means you have to let go of something in order to grab onto the thing that's in the future. But a lot of us, we don't have the faith, so we kind of hold on to the thing in the past, but we can't quite reach the thing that's in the future. And the thing in the future may not even reveal itself until you let go. You know, so it's only when I let go of things is when other things reveal themselves. Which that's something that I've learned to be true.
You have mentioned several times the word faith.
Yeah.
And I want to know what role faith plays in your life and how you have such an abundance of it, because we were talking about superpowers earlier, and I think faith, an active faith, is a superpower today.
It is. Well, first and foremost, so I'll just tell you straight up. So I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Okay. I love Jesus Christ, who's my Lord and Savior. And I'll say this, that even though I was a Christian for many years, I didn't necessarily have a relationship with Christ for many years. That started to happen more so within the last 10 years, I would say. But the role that faith has in my life is everything. So I have my relationship with Lisa. That's my wife, who you've met. And so this past June made 20 years that we've been married. That she's allowed me to be married to her. Okay. But I'll say, my number one relationship is not with her. My number one relationship is with God. Seriously. The person I talk with the most is God. The person who I spend the most time with, and who I think about, who's right there on my computer screen. So I read the Word of God every day. I pray every day. I do all these things. But that's a major part. So when I look at John 15, verse 12, it says to love each other in the same way I have loved you. That's everything for me. Right? I look at Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, where it says, keep on loving each other as brothers and sisters, right? And don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without even realizing it. That means that I don't even have to know who you are. You're an angel.
Yeah.
I don't have to see. And because I perceive you to be a beautiful angel, I'm going to treat you as such. I don't have to know your socioeconomic status, your demographic status, your age, your job title, none of that. You're a person. Therefore, you have value. Therefore, I will treat you that way. People think that serving and service is about the serving. It's not. The serving is really about making the other person feel important and special and valued and appreciated. So yeah, faith is that's the number one aspect of my life. I can say that with a lot of confidence. And as each year has gone by, my relationship with God has just gotten closer and tighter and tighter and tighter, to the point where I realize I can do nothing, absolutely nothing, without God as a forefront for me.
You said that biblically,
Yeah.
you lead a life where you are entertaining angels,
Yeah.
and that you're not interested in their demographic. You are not interested in where they went to school, their socioeconomic status. You're interested in them as human beings on this planet with you, or angels.
Yeah.
You have literally, with saying that, turned the entire conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion on its head, because we have spent millions, probably billions of dollars in trying to understand, well, how do I talk to a person who's a non-binary gendered person? How do I talk to a person who doesn't grow up in my neighborhood? And the reality of it is they're angels. They are divine creatures walking around who deserve the same respect, integrity, love that you probably demand for yourself. And I think it's that simple and it's that complex for people, because it's asking people to do something that may not be native to our character, which is love unconditionally.
That's exactly it. You just said it perfectly. I don't believe we have to teach people how to treat people well. Like in coming from the hotel business, like we often spend a lot of time training on how to serve and how to anticipate needs and how to exceed expectations and all of that. In my mind, you don't even have to teach people how to treat someone exceptionally well. I believe everyone already knows how to do that. If I take anyone and I say, who do you perceive to be important or valuable? If you list that person's name and I say, pretend that person comes in here right now, they will know how to treat them well. The issue that we have is we don't perceive everyone to be valuable. That's the issue. I remember I was in a restaurant. I was on a business trip a few years ago, and I'm in a restaurant and I'm eating, and the service was, blah. It was nothing special about the service. And everyone else was getting the same blah service. I was looking around. A gentleman came in through the front door, and there was this mass migration of all the staff to the front door. The same staff who was like, being very blasé and not very engaging with the guests. This one person came and everybody turned on there. Oh my gosh, so good to see you again. How you been? How's your family? The only thing they didn't do was they didn't sprinkle rose petals for him to walk on. So they knew all along how to make people feel special.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of teaching people how to make people feel special. It's a matter of saying, everyone is special. Everyone is a VIP. I don't care what your orientation is or your status is. It sounds simple, but most of us are not raised that way. Most of us don't come from societies or cultures or in households where the equal value of all human life is lifted up. Most people don't come from situations like that.
What was your situation? You grew up in a small island.
Yeah, St. Thomas, USVI. I'm the same VI.
What was that like growing up for you?
Yeah. So let me say this. So on St. Thomas, it's predominantly Black people, right? Or Afro-Caribbean people. So I grew up around people who look like me, essentially, for the most part. But my father, he worked as a tour operator, right? He would drive big safaris, big buses, right? So he would work a lot with the cruise ships. And, in the islands, tourism is the biggest industry, or pretty much the only industry, in St. Thomas even. So when the cruise ships come, he would offer tours. You got it? So a lot of times as a kid, I would go on these tours with him. And the tourists, most of them were not Black people. They were from everywhere else. So that was awesome for me. And my mom, she worked at airlines initially, and then she switched to working in hotels. So I've always had a kind of tourism vibe. But for me, working in hotels where my manager was from Singapore, my other manager was from Paris, France, and this person was from New York, and this person was from LA. So all of that just reinforced for me that people are people. Really, we have far more in common than we have that's not in common in terms of what we value and what we appreciate. So that's what it was for me. So for me, it was like I grew up seeing people as interesting and valuable that you take care of, because that's what I saw around me. It's particularly coming from a tourism-based industry, like an island like that.
You have had this amazing career, a great career in hospitality, 15 years plus in your own business. Great success. What is it about you that has given you such grace in a field that is overpopulated with people who are offering advice on how to lead companies, develop themselves, lead teams?
Yes, it's a great question, Patrick. I'll tell you, when I first started this business, I remember I spoke to a lot of people, but one of the people asked me that same question. Why you? Why do you think your business? I mean, just go on Google. There's like thousands of speakers and the consultants talking about this same thing, customer service and leadership and whatnot. And I remember I thought for like maybe a millisecond. And I said, but they're not me. I said, literally, I am the only me that has ever existed, will ever exist. Like there's no other me. So what does that mean? That means that no one can present the message or write the message the way I will do it. In the same way, I can't do it the way they would do it because we're unique. We're special, we're very unique. So I was able to value my uniqueness, and that helped me to value things like original thought, original thinking. I put a lot of emphasis on that part for me. If I'm preparing a keynote, if I'm doing something, I'm like, what is my perspective on this? Yeah, I read a lot, I watch a lot of things, but what is my perspective? I'm allowed to have a perspective, an original perspective that's not just some warmed over version of what someone else said. So my being, God only made me, plus he gave me my creator, gave me a creative mind. Therefore, I have a unique perspective, and I put value on that. So no matter if I'm in a place with 10 other people who does the same thing I do, they don't really do the same thing I do because they're not going to do it the way I do it. The same way, I mean, how many podcasts are there? There's tons of them. None of them will be like At the Podium. The only way it will be like At the Podium is if you tried to model At the Podium overly, like about other podcasts, and you're trying to mimic them.
It's so funny you say that because when we were working on this podcast, we spent a lot of time talking about me, not from an egotistical perspective, but if my name was going to be on it, it had to be me. It couldn't be, oh, this is how Howard Stern does it. This is how Oprah does it. This is how such and so do it. It's like, what is it about you that you put on the work that you're doing? Which I think, isn't that kind of the basis of leadership to begin with?
Totally. It's a basis of not even leadership, just authenticity and being your true authentic self. So in Japan, so there's a Japanese framework, which I'm sure you've heard of, called Ikigai, Ikigai. And the Ikigai essentially loosely translated is your reason for being. Who are you? Like when you talk about your values, your interests, your passions, and when all that merge into one, who is Patrick at his most authentic self? That is what should flow out of everything you do. Whether it's flowing, whether your authentic self is being manifested At the Podium or at your new organization that you're working in or in your home life with your family, it's still you. I think we run into problems when we try to be different versions of ourselves in different situations. This is me at work. This is me at home. This is me at church. This is me at this. You don't want that. You want to like, this is me wherever I am. Like Patrick, if I see you right now in a restaurant, if you come to my house, and we're on the podcast, this is still me. I don't change.
I've never asked anyone this question, and I've talked to many people in the development leadership sphere.
Yeah.
What makes an ineffective leader? Because we know what makes an effective leader. We talk a lot about it. That's a lot of books, tomes written about this. As I was preparing for this conversation today with you, I've never asked anyone what makes an ineffective leader, so I can make sure not to do that. In my purely selfish question here,
no.
Seriously,
I think what makes an ineffective leader, but first of all, there are many things. Much like there are many things that makes an effective leader. But if I was to just kind of boil all of it down to one thing, is not being someone who's worthy to be followed. So not being someone who's worthy to be followed. So when we look at the word lead, by definition, L-E-A-D, that word, basic definition is you're going somewhere and someone's following you. If there's no one following you, you can't say you're leading. Then you're taking a walk somewhere, right? Somebody has to be following you in order for you to say you're leading. So what makes an ineffective leader is they don't think about, am I worthy to be followed? Which goes beyond my job title. I can have a job title of executive director of or CEO of. So the job title does not make me worthy to be followed. Even you liking me is not sufficient for you to follow me, because what if you don't like me anymore? We have objectives, we have goals to do. You have to follow me because I believe in you and I do things and I help you and I insist and I see you as valuable. So what makes an ineffective leader, I think, is not being worthy to be followed. And that requires many of us to have a brutally honest conversations with ourselves about ourselves, which is the hardest conversations to have. Like, am I worthy to be followed? Like, really? I mean, I know naturally you want to do the affirmative head nod. Of course I'm worthy to be followed. Of course. I'm a great guy. Of course. Do I keep my word? Do I have integrity? Can I be trusted consistently? Right? Do I invest in people? All of that. Am I modeling? Am I modeling the kind of behavior that I want the people on my team to do? So I think that's how I would answer that question.
We are in a really unique time, which we talked about at the beginning of our conversation today. The world has shifted. We don't really know where we're going. We're going forward. We don't turn backwards. We only move forward.
Yeah.
But as we move forward into this unknown time, what do people need as leaders of businesses, as leaders of families to move forward? What does that look like with your crystal ball in the future?
I think there'll be much more of an emphasis on involving people in the planning of the work that affects them, involving you in the planning of work that affects you. I think before the pandemic, I was talking about this a lot in my leadership type courses, but even much, much, much more so now, that you have a lot of people who are intolerant of being unhappy. Basically, they expect to be happy at work or whatever it is that they're doing. They refuse to be unhappy because they may have seen their parents complaining every day coming home from work. They're like, I'm not going to be my mom or dad. I'm going to make sure I'm in a place that values me, wants me to be there, and I have a voice. That was the case from before the pandemic. Now it's times 100 now. So for leaders moving forward, much more than ever before, they really have to value the mind of those who they're fortunate to lead, ask their perspectives, and involved in the planning work that affects them. But there's also a balance in having high expectations. Because what I've also seen progressively over the last 20 plus years, we've had a lot more wishy-washy type leaders. And by wishy-washy, as an adjective, what I'm talking about is a lot of leaders who are not willing to say, no, this is the way we need it to be done, because this is the standard. There's a lot more of, well, let's all try to do it another way, okay? Okay. There's a lot more of that, a lot of poor, insufficient, or completely absent feedback. There's a lot more of that. So for moving forward in the future, you need leaders who have high expectations, but who are willing to respect the minds and the spirits of the people who are on their team. I think before, like 10, 15, 20 years ago, we all talked about this. This is not a new concept, but unfortunately, you could have gotten away with not doing it. And increasingly, you can't get away with not doing it anymore. You have to do it.
You have to do it. You have to do it. You've talked today about your wife, Lisa, who I have met, and I've met your kids at the iSpot conference a couple of years in 2019 when you were the dedicated contributor award winner. I met your family then, your beautiful family. What has being a dad, being a father taught you?
Sure. So we have two children. Okay. What has being a father taught me as a man? It's more than anything, I think it taught me that there's no limit to love. Our first child came and you're like, oh my God, I love this child so much. Is there any love left over? And the second child comes, oh my gosh, there's another double portion of love now. So love, there's no end. That one of the ways you know that you love someone is that there's no capacity, there's no barrier to it. You are willing to go above and beyond. You strain yourself. You never get tired of loving. You know what I'm saying? So that's number one, it taught me that love has no limits. But number two, it taught me patience, because naturally I'm not very patient. Like, I want things yesterday. I want to get it done now. Let's go now. I grew up in business. I'm a business world. Let's get it done now. I grew up working fast, busy, hotels. And that's how I've always lived my life. I want it done yesterday. Like my wife, Lisa, she is like meticulous, ready, aim, fire. Like, just plan it out. Let's research it. And I am fire, ready, aim. So having children has taught me, gotta have patience. So that is what I've learned, is that that's a muscle that you have to strengthen deliberately. So things like breathing techniques has helped me, right? Things like, again, my relationship with God. Be still and know that I am God, right? So be still, I'm still. If I need to walk away, I walk away. If I need to go someplace to a breathing, that's helped me. I think love, the limitless nature of love, and also power of patience. Those are virtues that I've learned, especially since I've had children.
I have one last question for you. We talk about transformational moments, the unexpected in people's lives. What was that for you? What was that thing that surprised you, you weren't prepared for, that totally shifted your life, your career?
One of the big ones was when I decided to get into training and development in the hotel business. That was not on my radar at all. So by trade, I'm a server. By trade, I'm a fine dining server. And I work a lot of other jobs and departments, but I'm a server. I went through a management training program, went in multiple departments. And then at the end of this program, I was supposed to select a managerial position to get into. That was the culmination, right? And I looked at the list. I remember looking at the list of open jobs that was available at the hotel, and I didn't want to do any of them because I had been kind of burnt out of the operations, and I wanted to have something more. I was dating Lisa at the time. I want something more steady, more Monday to Friday-ish. But none of the jobs in hotels, unless you're working in an office setting, fit that description. So finally, the HR director came to me and said, "Guess what? You have good news. We decided that we need to have someone to oversee the cafeteria." And in my mind, I'm like, I don't work in no cafeteria. Like, that was my initial reaction, because I was a fine dining server. I worked at the concierge. Nobody even likes the cafeteria. But I prayed about it. I remember praying about it. And I came back and I said, I'll take that job. I was the employee cafeteria manager. And with my restaurant background, I turned it into a restaurant. So my team and I, we got together every day and we would do our daily meetings together in the mornings. We had a mission statement. We cleaned and mopped and we surveyed the staff every month to find out what they wanted to eat. People started to look forward to come to the cafeteria. Well, around that time, a lady by the name of Christina Combs, who I still adore. Her name was Christina Combs. She was the director of training and development at the Ritz-Carlton St. Thomas. She said that she just accepted a job to be the opening director of training for the Ritz-Carlton in New Orleans. And she said, the hotel will be looking for a new director of training. And she said, I should apply. Now, Patrick, mind you, I never even thought about such a thing. Me? I don't have any training background. Now, granted, all the jobs I've held, the managers would always put me as the trainer because I always like to help people. That was another way of serving for me. So she convinced me. She said, okay, Bryan, I promise you'll be great at this. She said she got an invitation to do a training for a church on the island to their deacons, to their their ushers. And she said, why don't I do it? And she would record me doing the training and include that as part of my interview package before the executive committee. So I'm nervous. I put together this training. Lisa came, my parents came, Christina was there, and I did this training on St. Thomas for this little church and for the ushers. Well, that video became a part of my interviewing package, and I got the job as director of training. Now, I want you to understand something. The other person who applied for that same job, she was the corporate manager of training for Marriott International. But the executive committee unanimously voted for me to get that job. And I got that job and it changed my whole life. I was still serving, but through teaching and encouraging. There's a verse, I'll give this loud. This verse is in Romans 12, verse 6, 7, and 8. And it says, if your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. When you find that thing you're supposed to do, it's like a rocket. It's hard to not be very successful. So I found that thing that was like my lane. By the grace of God, again, somebody else believed in me, right? Christina believed in me. And then boom, there we are. That was 2001 when I got that job as director of training. So this is 20 years that I've been a professional training consulting person. So that's what happened, Patrick.
Bryan, I want to thank you so much for your time today, for your wisdom, for your energy. I'm so grateful for you spending some time with me today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Seriously. I mean, I think what you're doing is a powerful ministry, and a lot of people are going to learn and grow, and most importantly, being transformed by the banter and the discussion. Even if somebody can take away one word from this entire time, and that they can hang on to that one word to transform their life in a better way, it's all worth it. To me, we're all on this earth to help each other out. That's the whole point of being alive.
That is my hope. That is my hope. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. To those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. Use yours wisely.